Welcome to the Regenerative Agriculture Career Pathway. Let's get started. Regenerative agriculture is a farming approach that focuses on building the soil's health. There's no one specific way or method to do regenerative agriculture, it's really a combination of principles. The first one is minimal ground disturbance, so like no tilling or plowing of fields as much as possible. A lot of that can be really destructive to the soil life. And it also leaves bare soil, which means the soil is exposed to wind and rain and a lot of erosion. The next method is keeping the soil covered. So, again, this is part of protecting the soil. It's also about feeding the life in the soil, the earthworms, the mycelium. You need all that stuff to grow your plants. The next is the minimal or no use of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, or chemical fertilizers, because all these things can damage the life in the soil and also have terrible repercussions for wildlife and our drinking water. And there's just a lot of other ramifications why we don't want to use chemicals in our food. The last one is incorporating animals. So, this is usually through planned grazing. This kind of mimics a natural ecosystem where animals would come in and kind of browse and then drop fertilizer. And this is just part of the system that plants have grown up using for millions of years. So here we have an example of two different farms right next to each other. On the right is conventional agriculture. So this is basically dead. You can see it's just been tilled. There's almost nothing there, like little bits of grasses maybe. There's also very little life in the soil because the tilling itself is going to kill that stuff. And as that stuff dies, it's releasing CO2 up into the air. This also leaves it very vulnerable to any sort of erosion. So, from winds or rains, you're going to lose topsoil on this farm. Year after year, it's going to get depleted. So, it's just losing fertility. On the left is the opposite. You have different grasses, you've got herbs. There's a lot of stuff to feed wildlife and the stuff in the soil. So on the left, you're actually building fertility year after year. So year after year, your crops will do better. You'll be able to harvest more food while supporting wildlife, not paying for any chemicals. And if you'd like to know more about this process, there's a cool movie called Symphony of the Soil. It's definitely worth checking out. Here we have an example of a food forest. So here you can see the biodiversity. It's not just a monocrop. There's a bunch of different things living here. It's trying to mimic a natural forest ecosystem. So you have a canopy, an understory, ground covers, shrubs, vines. All these things actually help each other. This kind of synergy happens. So you get more from each species individually. You also have a resilience. So about a week ago, there was a drought in Europe and it ended up killing entire crops. So farmers, if you're only growing peaches and you lose your peaches, you're done. That was it. So here, if you lose your peaches, you're fine. You've got olives growing, you've got grapes growing, you've got medicine plants, you've got carrots. There's so much more going on here, and it just really builds resiliency to have that biodiversity. So here's a graphic illustrating how plants work together. In the ground, there's mycelium that can connect plant roots together. So that means a tree can share nitrogen or carbon or sugar or whatever it needs with another tree or plant. This is called mutualism, and this is one of the methods that regenerative agriculture relies on. These images show the basic levels that make up a food forest, like canopy, shrubs, ground covers. This method tries to mimic how a natural forest would function. There are many variations of planting these. For example, strawberries can be used as a ground cover, but if the main crops are trees, you might want to use a nitrogen fixer like clover or something like comfrey that provides potassium and calcium. Every farm is different, so there are jobs for people who know how to combine species and to design these systems. When designed well, these systems are self sustaining. They provide their own fertilizers and pest controls, and they need very little work from us to keep them going. This is an image of a food forest from Morocco. This is pretty amazing because this is over 2,000 years old, they think. They don't know because nobody knows who planted this. And for a long time, this wasn't maintained by people, this was just abandoned, but it kept going. The trees and everything, they reseeded themselves. Like literally with no help from humans, this forest system just kept growing. At the top, you can see these are date palms and they're providing shade for the everything else. So they're providing dates and they're also helping the other species in this system. Underneath them are olives and figs. There's grapes, there's bananas, there's all sorts of things growing here. It's pretty cool. You can also see in the background that this is the desert. This is a place that gets around 10 inches of rain. And here's a food forest that now people come to. They just collect food and then they leave. They do hardly any work in this place to keep it going, but it's providing a whole village with food. Here's another great example. On the left, we have a field that was managed by rotational grazing. This means that cows or sheep, whatever was brought to it, they're allowed to eat, fertilize the soil, and then move on. And then the grass has had time to recover. On the right is a different situation. This is conventional grazing. This is where a bunch of animals are brought to a land and then left there, and they basically eat their favorite things down to the ground. The plants don't have time to regrow, so over time, this literally can become a desert. This is the desert of Maine. So this is a place that gets over 40 inches of rain, over 70 inches of snow. So it's technically not a desert. But you can see this was managed very poorly. I think it was sheep or pigs. And they basically just destroyed the landscape. They destroyed the soil life. So now, 100 years later, it still is like sand dunes. This is kind of incredible. So here on the left, we see this is the Chihuahuan Desert. And on the right, we see also the Chihuahuan Desert in the same place just 5 years later after using rotational grazing. Basically, they just brought cows onto the land, let them graze for a day, and then didn't let them come back for a year. Has dramatic results on the landscape. As you can see, the grass is over 6 feet tall in the photo on the right. And on the left, you're looking at desert where there's almost no life at all. This even affects things like the rain cycle. We can see in places of Brazil where it's been just logged in the rainforest, it literally gets half as much rain as it used to. So, doing methods like this can have huge ramifications for wildlife, for the nature, and it's also just incredible because now instead of being able to have just a few cows in one spot, you can feed so many more animals on the exact same piece of land if you just do it more carefully. This is a farm by Mark Shepard. He mostly focuses on trees that produce things like lumber or chestnuts or apples. But those trees take a long time to mature, so here he has cows going through the system, and they're actually helping those trees grow. This is a great example of how in a food forest, while you're waiting, there's all these other ways that you can draw an income for your farm. This is also just amazing because you can see these cows, they're pretty happy, they've got shade, they've got tall grass. This is the complete opposite of those factory farms. This is the kind of cow, like, a lot of people are vegan because they don't like the treatment of cows, but these are some happy cows. So, why is all this stuff important? Well, conventional farming is incredibly bad For us, for the environment, it's kind of mind blowing that we spray poisons on our food. Like, that's just kind of unbelievable. In this picture, you can see there's no life growing here. There's no deer, there's no birds, there's no frogs. And if there was fish in the nearby stream, would you really want to eat that, knowing it's just full of poisons? It's kind of crazy that they just did a study. We can detect these poisons in our drinking supply. It's in the air we breathe. It's not just on our food. Less than 1% of pesticides actually reach their desired target. The rest just goes out into the atmosphere or in our drinking supplies. Another reason is we're losing topsoil. This method of farming is basically extracting nutrients from the soil without putting any back in. So year after year, there's less fertility. They did a study where 100 years ago, if you ate a strawberry, it would basically have 10 times as much vitamin C as a strawberry that you'd eat today. So you'd literally have to eat 10 times as many fruits to get the same nutritional value. Another reason is the carbon emissions. Farming, the way we do it now, contributes almost a third of our total CO2 contributions that the entire human race produces. What they've found is through regenerative farming, you can actually sequester carbon. There was a ranch, I think it was in Kansas, and they just studied that over the last 30 years, it's sequestered 93 tons of carbon per acre. So, averaged out every year, that's sequestering over 3 tons of carbon. That's kind of amazing. The Rodale Institute did a study saying we could basically absorb all the CO2 emissions that all of humanity creates if we just switch to regenerative agriculture. So, if you're looking for a job that can help the environment, this is one of the biggest things that you can do. So, with regenerative agriculture, we can grow more food per acre. We can grow healthier food. We can reduce the amount of poisons in our food and drinking water. We can fight climate change by sequestering carbon. We can give farm animals a happy life. We can support wildlife, and we can make money doing it. 88% of corn and soybean farmers that switch to regenerative practices now make more money. Almond orchards that switch have 6 times as much wildlife present on their farms, while making twice as much money and using less water. If you're looking for a job in regenerative agriculture, there is actually a huge range of options depending on your skills, experience, and education. Let's begin with the farmhand. This is the starting point. This is where you do whatever needs doing on a farm. The job will be different depending on if it's a beet farm, a vegetable farm, an orchard, a cattle ranch. This could be mending fences, planting seeds, working with animals. It can really be a range of things. This is a lower salary, maybe 18 to 25 an hour, but you're building up your experience. Many farms won't hire people for the higher paying jobs unless they have some experience. From here, you can get promoted, but it helps to have specific knowledge for different positions. There are certificates available, so in a short amount of time, you can make double the pay if you get a certificate in something like soil science, permaculture design. If you want to make more money, getting a degree in something like ecology, biology, botany, environmental science, organic agriculture, sustainable farming practices, this is a really good idea. Then there are jobs paying over 100K a year. Most of these require a bachelor's degree in a related field and 3 to 5 years of experience. More of these jobs are opening every year. Sustainable agriculture is becoming more and more popular. There's a growing demand for healthy food and sustainable food, and farmers are learning they can make a lot more money with less risk. You also don't need to be a cowboy or be really into plants. There's a lot of other jobs involved. I just saw a posting for a full time event planner to set up weddings and farm tours, and it paid over 100K a year. Farms need drivers, farms need managers, logistics, efficiency experts. They need drone pilots, engineers, mechanics, automation experts, plumbers, irrigation experts. A farm in the Philippines found that they could save 30% of their costs by using drones to plant seeds more efficiently. You can have a totally different skill set than a farmer and still find a job in agriculture. A nearby regenerative ranch has 2 people that work with the animals. The other 20 people are driving, packing boxes, selling at farmers markets, and doing the bookkeeping. In the upper right hand corner is a photo of Elaine Ingram. She teaches a course on how to make compost tea. Part of the course is you're studying microbes under a microscope so you can tailor specific blends to different crops. This is kind of interesting stuff. I had a tree, and for 5 years it never fruited or even bloomed. I made compost tea, sprayed it on the tree, and then within 2 weeks it was covered with blooms. Some of the people who have taken her course and gotten the certificate are able to make $150 an hour now. If you're interested in starting a career, there's a lot of different ways that you can get going. You can start with just going to farmers markets, talking to people. Put yourself out there and try to make some connections. You never know, your friend or your friend of a friend might know somebody who's a grower. There's other websites to check out like ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, Indeed.com. Can kind of give you an idea what is available around and what you might be interested in. There's a lot of different courses and certificate programs, so depending on your interest, it's definitely good to just start checking those out. And it definitely helps to get a degree. So if you're interested in anything like ecology, soil science, environmental science, biology, it's definitely something worth looking into. There's a lot of different resources out there that you can learn from, but some of these people, they don't even really know what they're doing, and they're just taking bits of things that they learned from other people and then presenting them to you. If you go on YouTube, you can find a bunch of great stuff, but I'd highly recommend Googling these people first. Andrew Millison, Joel Salatin, Mark Shepard, Brad Lancaster, Jeff Lawton, Elaine Ingham, The Weedy Garden, Neil Spackman. These people have done some pretty amazing stuff. There's a lot of other great teachers out there too, and it's definitely worth just checking these things out. The Weedy Garden might be a good place to start. His videos, they're really artistic and kind of entertaining. There's a couple movies that are really interesting, like Symphony of the Soil, Kiss the Ground, Common Ground, Biggest Little Farm, Feeding Tomorrow, and then there's a couple other ones like Cowspiracy and Rotten. Kind of lets you know what's going on in our food system, but it's great to see the ones that really you learn something from. And if you're still interested, just Google regenerative agriculture. There's so much going on here that I haven't gone over. Some really cool stuff. It's definitely worth checking out. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Don't forget to check out some of the greats, and good luck.